few minutes.
Okay. Thank you, John. All my words of wisdom there just went to waste.
Well, not on 5 people or 4 people.
Yeah. Well, I think, especially because he does generate so much controversy, it really is important to try to do what he says. Look behind the words to see the person from whom the words are coming, and again, allow yourselves to walk with him. There may be disagreements. There always are.
I think it's excellent because the ideology is abstract. It's not it should not be too closely identified with the persona, and we have to love the persona and separate that out. It's almost like the theological principle of hate the sin, love the sinner. I think that was Augustine. But I mean, it's the same thing, and we tend to. I know I tend to identify the two, and because politician X spouts off stuff that's off the wall, and then I distance myself from him, if not worse, or her, and that's very helpful, I thought, and I never thought of it that way. That particularly all these political crazinesses are they're in the ideological realm. They don't have a persona. They don't have legs.
Right.
So I have a question. John, and everybody. Good. So if a person is not who that person, what that person says, what that person does, what that person thinks, I mean, what is the persona when you talk about persona versus ideology? Do you know what I mean? I mean, if they're not what they say, what they do, what they think, if that's not their persona, what is their persona? So I'm not quite understanding what.
Yeah, I get it. That's a good question. Yeah. When I'm using the term persona, I'm using it in a theological sense of their personhood. Who they are in the sight of God. As
got it.
The loving creature of God, and that's completely independent of whatever ideology they might be embracing at the moment.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Now, if it's that this person is a beloved child of God,
yes,
therefore a brother or sister to me, and therefore brother or sister to all of humanity, very often the negative stuff that comes out of them is a contradiction to that reality that they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, just as an example, I mean, I was a little nervous going into, just immediately this memorial with my cousins that I haven't seen in probably 30, 40 years, and knowing what my cousin in Palm Springs is saying, how, they're Trumpers and anti-vax and all this. And I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do if they start talking about this when I go? And I go, well, I have to rise above that and say they are family. I haven't seen them. I want to reconnect. And, as Tom said, they are children of God. And so that supersedes any ideology, which is what John is saying, over and above, because those other ties are much stronger and much more authentic and bringing not just the mind, but the heart together. And, I think that's where we try to separate those two, and that causes us so many problems.
That's the greater reality, is that they're children of God.
Right.
And one of the points that he makes, and again, I'm paraphrasing. I read it rather quickly this morning, but one of the points that he makes is that it's important not to let yourself get caught up into the mindset that they are, or I would say, not to let yourself be caught up into the territory that they are trying to create. In other words, you are doomed to failure if you try to argue.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So acceptance of the person, disagreement, maybe looking for opportunities to talk about something. But once it gets into one person opposing the other in their ideology, you're basically playing a losing game. Nobody is convinced that way. Nobody is converted that way, which is one reason why I'm thinking the real experience that Pope Francis had with that was with Archbishop Vigano.
Oh, yeah.
There is no worse and more articulate opponent to Pope Francis than Vigano, who keeps trying to call him out to make a response. And I think Francis wisely knows that once he actually responds to that, he will be getting into a war of words that it's impossible to win. And I think it's the same thing with Trump and crowd. Bob,
Pope Francis talking about the ideology reminds me of what Richard Rohr always talks about, addictions.
Oh, yeah.
And I have addictions, and there's different addictions, but Rohr says everybody has one basic addiction. And it's a fantastic concept that I am addicted to. I'm always right, and you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And so even when you talk about apologetics, theology, even liturgy, these are all, to me, they're just ideologies. No one is really going to talk about apologetics. Let me give you my point. You give me your point. I just say, I'll give you the premise and I'll give it a BS that will prove it.
Yeah.
But theology too, right?
Yeah.
Liturgy, whatever it is.
Yeah. Now, it is it is 9 o'clock. So let me see if I can get we need to go live on Facebook. Okay, I think we are finished now on Facebook. Yes, we are. So I'm not too sure that this session ended the way anybody thought that it would at the beginning, but
Can I make one more suggestion on what you were just talking about?
please.
That thing about the chosen, that those are like that's a modern crew that's making these stories up, right? To me, that's exactly what the evangelists did. Because I know for sure that Matthew did not exactly say all those things, and that's okay. These communities of John and all this, as we all know this, but it's just, I think it's just as good. This is just as good as the original stories.
Well, just as good definitely in a certain sense, because it communicates us and draws us into the origins. What I think we need to recognize is that there's been 2,000 years of living with all of this, following upon the event of Jesus Christ and the Gospels. And I would say at very least, the story is as good as any of the artistic representations have been. Our ideas of what happened as related in the Gospels is probably, I think, more conditioned by the art of 2 millennia between then and now. When we think of the Last Judgment, who do we think of? Michelangelo. When we think of creation, who do we think of? Michelangelo. When we think of the Call of Matthew, we think of Caravaggio. When we think of heaven, purgatory, and hell, we think of Dante.
Last Supper, Da Vinci.
Last Supper, Da Vinci, where, obviously they had ordered a table for 24 because they all wanted to sit on one side of it. And all that sort of thing. Well, this chosen is just as legitimate in bringing modern sensitivities
Mhm.
into
Mhm.
the understanding and depiction um, of the relationship of Jesus with his disciples, which I think is the primary theme of that, viewed often from the disciples' eyes, and it's very creative. There's, you know, if you want to know who and what the disciples actually were, there isn't that much to go on in the Gospels.
Mm.
So we've got to infer a lot. We've got to use a creative imagination. And the beauty, to my mind, I'm getting on a soapbox here, but the beauty, to my mind, of The Chosen is that the creators are always seeking to relate what they are doing to the gospel. They want to be very, very careful not to do anything contradictory. As many depictions of, you know, for example, Dan Brown's God Awful Works.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
You know, they don't want to do anything to contradict that, but they do want to creatively expand on it. And I think
Mhm.
You know, I seem like I'm out in left field here. I hear you talking about The Chosen all the time. I don't know where I get it on. Is it Netflix or where do I
no.
where do I access it?
You go
Yeah.
on your computer, on a browser,
Yeah.
go to thechosen.tv,
Okay.
and it's all freely available on their website. But what they prefer is that you view it through an app, whether it's iPhone or an Android phone or an iPad or an Android tablet or whatever. The app actually gives you cleaner access to
Yeah.
videos and all of that than.
Mm.
So go to, if you have an iPhone, go to the App Store. If you have a Android, go to Google Play and just search for The Chosen, and you'll find it, and then download
Okay.
it.
You know, I'm on a PC for my computer, you know, and so I would imagine that I can find the
Use
app
your
there.
browser, whatever your browser is.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's helpful. I just wasn't sure
Yeah.
Yeah.
how to access it. It sounds marvelous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not on any of the streaming channels. It's not
Okay.
on the Apple TV or on Netflix or Hulu
Right.
or any of those
Yeah.
others. It
Yeah.
is.
Okay, then I can find it because it sounds marvelous, Bob.
This fits right into the ideology that I want to just real quickly get into. I go around to different parishes, and mostly it's one ideology, and it's not Genesis, and it's not mine. It's another ideology that's just, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just another way to look at things that's very orthodox. And this is the, what do we call it? We have to take the literal. This is the literal, this is exactly what happened. And what happened was that the commentators have done the same thing. So the commentators, they know what kind of ideology who the audience will buy this. And so they give you all the explanations, like the Protestant things. Was my favorite, John MacArthur, this the extreme. And his commentary is totally exactly opposite of a lot of other things. So my whole point is not that they're right or wrong, but wow, it's really something. You walk into those places and they look at you like, where'd you get that idea from? You know, oh, I don't know, this Christian, Catholic.
You know, I do have another, I do have another, I would say, pet idea of mine, that, you know, it's less a matter of right or wrong as polar opposites, as it is a matter of trying to replace the whole truth with a partial truth.
Mm, mm.
And then it ends up that you deny anything that is not in accord with that partial truth. And somehow or other, who was it? Was it you, Jan, or was it Kathy who sent that article on abortion and trying to find common ground?
It was probably Kathy, I think.
Probably Kathy, yeah. You know, that article, to my mind, really points to the way we need to try to get dialogue today, and that is, you know, there are common values that people of extremes actually do adhere to.
Sure.
They share common fears, common values, common outlooks that, if taken to extremes, lead in one direction or another. But usually it leads one way or another by denying certain correlative things.
We're back to via media too, to a large extent, I think.
Right. Right.
And that's Newman, and I don't think Newman, even when he became a cardinal, that he ever abandoned that idea of finding the common ground in the middle, rather than in the extremes.
Yeah.
Actually,
I think the via media goes back to Aquinas, or maybe
probably ultimately true.
Actually, it goes back to Nagarjuna.
Wow. So it's got long roots, but it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's whoever was doing it, and I think Newman picked it up as because the Church of England was going nuts. I mean, they were having this tremendous, you know, you're either crazy high church, crazy Catholic, and they would find people for that back in, you know, in the day of Henry VIII and following and all that, and or your low church, you know, what we call snake belly low, or what I call subterranean low church. I mean, there was the tremendous polarity, and Newman said, "This is crazy. We are the Church of England. We're the continuation of. We should have that kind of balance." And he brought that balance back to the Oxford movement, and that has perdured to the present day. And I think that's very Catholic, to have that sense of balance, and not to the extreme. But Bob, am I hearing you right that you go to various parishes? I don't know. Do you do Bible studies, or I don't know exactly what brings you from parish to parish? But what I'm hearing you say is that you sense a kind of a monochromatic approach to theology and liturgy and everything else as you move.
I'm not saying that Alex Hahn is a bad person. I'm just saying he is a big leader, and whatever he says to all these parishes tonight on the west side, over wherever it is.
Who's Alex Hahn?
It's the worst. You start off as a Protestant, and then you see the light, become a Catholic, and then you have all the answers. You just can't come out of a Jesuits or anybody and not realize that there's a lot of different ways of doing this. There isn't one answer.
No.
Come on.
Is he a major leader in your diocese? I mean, I don't know who you're talking about. It's Alex Hahn, and who is that?
Oh, he's national.
Oh, is he? I missed that.
Well, who is he? I
don't know who that is either.
Alex Hahn?
I know
I'm not
Scott
saying it right.
Hahn.
Yeah,
What?
I think you got the first
Scott
name right.
Hahn.
Yeah, okay. So that
Yeah, I know.
Alex,
you know
Hahn.
when I say Alex, you know I mean Scott. That's my
Okay,
fault.
yeah,
Sorry.
I know
No,
you're-
you don't
Yeah,
know that you
Scott,
mean
I know. Yeah.
Alex
Yeah,
Hahn
yeah.
is
I was
a
making a heresy out of
artist,
the guy.
saxophonist.
That's what I meant.
I thought that was Gabriel who blew his horn.
And
huh?
he's a composer who's based in LA.
So, yeah, this guy's very,
My
very.
face is red.
Yes, okay. Christmas is not that far away.
Yeah.
So is Santa Claus.
You try to get a face like this.
Anyway, I think that's very interesting, though. But you know, the monochromatic kind of, how should I put it, uniformism or what have you. You can have unity without having uniformity and stuff. It's I don't think it's truly. I mean, in the term kataholos, according to the whole, It's not really kataholos.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and I, naively look at it, when I started doing all this studying, as just that divide between academia and pastoral, theology, because
Oh,
you've
yeah.
got people on the one hand that study and pursue and are curious, and then those who come in, even if they're newbies to the parishes. And I think there's, like in Europe, and I'm trying to think of her name in Ireland, who used to be the prime minister, this idea of the old Catholic as opposed to the new Catholic, and there's a divide there as well. So, it's across so many different paths that it's hard to find, again, one way that people are responding. And so we need all these diverse ways of looking at it, because we have all these influences coming from outside. I mean, I find myself, of late going to these different parishes and looking at, the music, which, at Good Shepherd, we have someone who looks at, all of the choral music that was produced. Okay, maybe it's biased toward Europe, but so rich, as opposed to all this praise and worship from which people want because they think it's it's attracting young people, and the Protestant evangelicals who are disillusioned and convert, and it doesn't speak to me because it's too simplistic, and I miss the richness of not just the music but the words, and putting it together in a way that is aesthetically advanced, so to speak. So
Absolutely. I mean, it becomes really, like doggerel. I mean, after a
yes.
while, I mean, how many times can you hear, on eagle's wings? And I mean, it's overdone. It's like, I mean, in the old days when I was growing up, the Catholics knew two hymns: "Holy God, we praise Thy name." The good German hymn "Lobe den Herren." It's a great hymn, and it's in our Episcopal hymnal and everything else. But that was the only one they knew, and then maybe a benediction hymn, the Tantum Ergo or something like that. I mean, that was it. There was no other thing.
Well, Immaculate
And,
Mary.
huh?
Immaculate Mary.
The O Salutaris also, But I
Yeah.
mean, your average Catholic parish, there was no congregational singing.
Ave, Ave.
It's good stuff, though. But anyway, it's just an interesting thing. But Bob's point, you do Bible studies, Bob? Is that when you go from parish to parish? You said, or
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that when you go to these Bible studies, you are getting the whole, it's not just being against abortion, which is fine, but they're against the gays and they're against and it goes on. You're right. In fact, one time they were, well, I don't want to get just one example, but it seems like it's just about like a Trump thing. The Catholics have to be against communists or something like we used to do.
Yeah, well, we are going from, we have to remember part of our heritage is that whole exaggerated anti-communist drive of the 1950s.
No.
Yeah.
So
except you don't get that. You don't get all that in my Bible study.
well, Bob, John has been trying to ask you, just exactly what are you doing? Are you leading Bible studies in different groups, different parishes, or what is taking you from one parish to another?
You set me up. I'm with the best, right below me. So I've been with Janice for 5 years. In other words, when I went to my own parish, when they didn't even have a Bible study, and I said to the parish, to the pastor, "Oh boy, here I am, baby. I could."
Now, what
They
parish
ran me out. They ran me out so fast.
There you go.
Because
parish
I
is that?
said, there's a lot of different ways of looking at things. They said, get out of here.
What parish is that? What parish is that? You're being very coy.
I'm at by LAX visitation, St. Anastasia, so the worst. It's so there's El Segundo, St. Anthony's. They just have even Lectio Divina. They make up their own Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is fabulous, but they bastard that thing into doing problems and solvings, and they have all the answers.
nothing to do
Okay.
with it.
So in other words, your parish range is there in the LAX area. visitation,
yeah.
Anastasia's, St. Anthony's. And so, okay, that's just helping me to locate it. Because I'm a little bit south of you. I'm pretty familiar with that area. In fact,
Which one is yours?
pardon me?
Which one is yours?
None of them. I'm
Oh.
retired.
That sounds like the one I'm in.
I'm retired.
I go on.
I'm living in St. Lawrence Martyr, but I don't really have any association there.
Okay. Yeah.
But actually, I do have a little story because when I timed out of OLA in Claremont, the number one parish that I applied for was Visitation.
Here?
Yeah.
Well, so
and
you can't beat Forston.
And well, it wasn't Forson, it was Brailsford.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And he died.
And he died. And I probably wouldn't have, although, he might have killed me.
Okay.
I think it was smoking that killed him.
Tom, that's what I'm about to tell you. You wouldn't have liked it.
Well, I don't know. To be really honest, I didn't find the overall community at Good Shepherd to be that life-giving. There were life-giving people there. We had, but I had to create kind of almost a separate parish with the various liturgical ministers and whatnot that I was able to bring in while keeping some of the old guard. And it basically burned me out. So there was too much control there by the rich and famous and powerful that I couldn't deal with. The other thing is, and you might be kind of aware of this, Jan, I only had 6 years at Good Shepherd, whereas I had 15 years at OLA. And I tried to condense what community development we had at OLA into 6 years at Good Shepherd, and found, it burned me out. I can't say too much for anybody else. I can't lay the blame anywhere else.
Wow.
So on that happy note, shall we call it a day?
I'm so petty. I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
No, it's good. I'm glad we can be honest with one another.
That's right.
And, there's a great German proverb I want to toss in here, show off my German. Es wird überall mit Wasser gekocht. That means everybody boils with water. Okay. It's a great proverb. Es wird überall mit Wasser gekocht. And some of the stuff, Tom, that you were just elaborating in terms of priestly burnout from the rich and the famous, getting in the way of the Lord, essentially, is so Episcopal. I mean, it's typical of what we call cardinal parishes, which is those parishes, the big and the famous, Beverly Hills, we have, great parish there, etc. And Pacific Palisades, these are the biggies, and, and people who are of that ilk gravitate to. I used to call them cathedral hoppers. They always want to go to the place where you get all the bells and the whistles. And the people who go there tend to not be in the spirit of, what I'm trying to say. It's more, they bring their CEO-ness with them, and so that's inimical to the spirit of Christ in my book, and it's wrecked many a cardinal parish. I mean, they go out of their way to break all the rules because they, give the most money to the diocese, etc. This, I mean, it comes back to the great German proverb: "Es wird überall mit Wasser gekocht."
Yeah. Or that great English proverb, "Money talks."
No, and I've never fed into, I have never been that high in the administration to know the underpinnings of that. But I have to say, I think at this point, even though I'm not aware of it, even because I'm not there that often, is I think some of that has died off tremendously. You know, there isn't a lot of that left, and I could be wrong that there's maybe people behind the scenes that are orchestrating that at you know, at Good Shepherd now, but I'm not aware of it. So, yeah, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard. It's a hard maneuvering for sure.
Well, Father Ed probably, he certainly has a very different style from me, and
Right.
he's much younger, and
Yeah.
he probably has a little more patience than I was able to muster as well. So on
And
that
Tom-
happy note, shall we?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I'll save this, I'll save this for next century.
Next century, okay. I don't think any of us are going to be alive in the next century.
Speak for yourself, Tom.
On that happy note, I have a button in front of me that says end meeting for all.
Yes. Okay.
God bless you all.
Bye,
we're about to
everybody.
be
Have a
moved
good week.